This week on Uncut Gems with Slim, it's okay to be called, to be gifted in many things. That you don't have to just pick to one thing because that's what social media said.
Hey guys, welcome back, y'all. This is Slim Reshae, aka Jasmine, and we are here for season 2, episode 2 of Uncut Gems with Slim. And I'm super excited because we have a familiar face on the show. Y'all, give it up for Miss LaShay Price herself. Woo woo. So today I wanted to bring on some creators for this series to just talk about what real life looks like in the creator space. And so I've known you for a couple of years now. One of my favorite creators, Create Hers, okay? And there's been multiple different brands that I know. Like when I think of LaShay Price, I think of the Creative Studio Cola. I think of LaShay Price Photography, which is what I met you as. LaShay Price Living, Brand Yourself Profitable, Curated Happiness. Like there's a lot of different brands that you have developed. And so today I want to talk to a creator who doesn't know where to start. They're trying to start, and in the world where like navigating like what you want to do, creators are always like, step one, you should start off with like narrowing your niche and figuring out what your niche is so you can know like, okay, I'm gonna be a natural hair influencer, I'm gonna do makeup, I'm gonna do lifestyle. And it's all about when you start narrowing it down to like one thing to do. So I want to know, tell me a little bit about how you've like developed as a creator, where did it start, and just your journey of all of your brands that you've started.
So my brand started probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more.
Okay.
I started out making wreaths and hair bows for my daughter. And then later it evolved to monogramming. I used to paint, and I still paint a little bit. I upcycle furniture. So I would go out to like the Goodwill and different thrift stores, find old vintage furniture, upcycle them. Monogramming t-shirts. I had a silhouette cameo, which I still have. So that's where my creative journey actually began. So probably about 10 to 13 years ago.
Okay, wow. And so I might have to hit you up about that wreaths for the new house. But so when you started like branding yourself profitable, okay, so like what is like your first brand that you did like for profit? And then kind of take me through the journey of those different brands.
So the first brand that I started monetizing was the brand with doing t-shirts and doing like different embroidery. So that was the first brand. It was actually called Virtuous Designs by LaShay.
Yes.
So
every Kingdom woman be like Virtuous Designs, and
it had like this
Creations.
It had like this whole little crown like as the logo.
Yeah.
Like it was a whole thing. But that was my first brand that I started 10 years ago. And it was literally, it started with like car decals, monogramming t-shirts, infinity scarves with like your monogram on it. And it was literally an online Etsy shop.
Okay.
And it was booming. Like, I started it around Christmas time. So I remember one Christmas, I was actually sewing infinity scarves and monogramming them. And I had a client in California.
Oh, wow.
And I made 26 infinity scarves
Period.
with a sewing machine. It was a whole thing. So that's where it started. Virtuous Designs by LaShay.
Okay, and then did you have any brands between that and photography?
Nope, it was literally that. I was branding myself and I didn't know it. So I was showing up online, just kind of sharing different things that I was making.
Because you were a DIY girl, right?
Because I was a DIY
you are
girl.
I'm
a DIY girl.
Okay.
So I was literally, back then it was Facebook. So I was big on like documenting and sharing my journey. So as I would make things, I was sharing them on Facebook. And in the beginning, it wasn't to monetize it. It was just because it was simply what I was passionate about. And then things just kind of started to evolve from there. Okay. And yeah, so most people, I was branding myself before I became a brand.
Real quick, I just wanted to take a moment and pause and ask, are you subscribed?
make sure you subscribe to us on all podcast streaming platforms and check out the visual on YouTube at Uncut Gems with Slim. Lastly, don't forget we are also on Instagram. Follow us on Insta to get motivational snippets, episode highlights, and so much more. Now, let's get back to today's episode. I met LaShay when she was really just kind of stepping into her photography full force. I remember when I first met you, you were kind of saying how I don't really do, I started all kind of testing out with family photography and stuff like that, but I really want to get into studio photography and shooting like influencers and stuff like that. And that's kind of how we hit it off. So I guess a question I have for you is between photography, branding coach, curated happiness, and those things, can you tell me how you started with photography, but it kind of just transformed into all of these different little areas or sub-brands? Tell me a little bit about that journey and how you went from like this initial idea or this one niche to expanding.
So I always tell people I never intended to become a photographer. Photography was something that I actually learned as a way to document my own personal journey as a creative. So I have a strong love for home decor, party supplies.
I'm gonna need that home decor help.
And so I always, my own personal goal was to always have my own home decor line. So that's wallpaper, furniture. So I love hosting dinner parties. So I learned photography as a way to document my creative journey. So when I was DIYing things to where I didn't have to hire a photographer every time I had a creative burst of energy.
Because it's expensive, y'all.
Because it's expensive, right? And it literally just evolved from there. I was literally headed down the path of being a blogger and a content creator. So that's where I literally was starting a DIY blog. And then photography kind of happened in the process. I started sharing my work and people started booking me, and it literally evolved from family photography, which I kind of had like a love-hate relationship, to about 3 years ago, it evolved into branding photography, which played heavily into my corporate marketing background. So that's kind of where my brand with photography evolved from.
Okay, and tell us about curated happiness.
So curated happiness basically was sparked based on like my love for parties and home decor. But one of the things that I've learned recently was curated happiness never was supposed to be a brand.
Ooh, tell me about that.
So curated happiness was basically, it was like that missing thing it was the thing that I was missing as a creative. So when I became full-time as a branding photographer, 2 years ago, my world was literally centered around what I was doing professionally. I had no creative outlet. It was like, all right, you're out of corporate, you're full-time, and this is what you're going to be doing to provide for your family. So in the process of trying to figure out what full-time entrepreneurship looked like, I didn't realize that I was missing those moments of curating my own happiness in my day-to-day.
Okay.
I was busy. I was getting up in the hustle bustle of being on calls with clients all day. So curated happiness literally was birthed from a space of longing to be creative. But sometimes we jump and we launch things without clarity if that's what we're supposed to be doing. So
you might have just walked yourself into another podcast episode, okay? Because I know there's a lot of creators out there who want to go full-time. But we gonna save that for another episode. So if y'all interested in that, make sure y'all comment below. But so with all of your kind of brand journey that you mentioned and everything like that, can you speak to the creator who wants to get started? They haven't started their brand yet, but they're wanting to launch a YouTube channel, start a business or anything like that, but they're struggling with social medias or society's standard of narrowing their niche. What advice would you give to them as far as like navigating where to start when they want to do it all?
So probably multiple things. I won't even put 2 things on there. One of the biggest things I would say is start where you are. 2, understand that where you start, 9 times out of 10, you're going to pivot. 3, understand that your starting point is your starting point. So often on social media, we can get caught up in what everyone else's brand looks like, that we kind of lose focus of who we've been called to be. And then 4, the biggest thing that I would say is, for me, understanding that your brand is not going to look like anybody else's. So sometimes, we hear a lot of people talk about, oh, you want to niche down. Well, niching down sometimes is not that easy. For me, I had to really and truly go through different brands in order to really find the things that really resonated with me, resonated with my audience. But then also in the same breath, I realized that it's okay to be called, to be gifted in many things, that you don't have to just pick to one thing because that's what social media says. Pick a niche. And for a while, I found myself like, okay, Shay, you're a photographer, but God called me to be more than a photographer. God gifted my hands to be more than just a photographer. So learning to embrace all the things that God has called you to be and do, that you don't have to shrink it all or put it all in one little package. So that would be my advice.
Okay. And so what was your step 1? Like when you took, you can go from either 2 standpoints. When you decided to be a photographer and kind of take that serious, or even with your designs, when you started that, what was like your step 1 to put yourself out there? Or you could give me the perspective of when you went entrepreneur full time.
So step 1 is just showing up. That was my step 1. Step 1 is showing up and knowing that in entrepreneurship or content creating or whatever the case may be, there's no blueprint to it. Like there's no blueprint, there's no guide. So it's just showing up and finding your own lane.
And can you specify for me, is that showing up for people, showing up for engagement, or showing up for yourself?
It is showing up for yourself.
Okay, because a lot of times, I was just telling them last week that a lot of times when you try to show up for the engagement, like you're going to get disappointed every time. Okay. Because you can only control what you can control. So like showing up for yourself is the way to go.
Yes. One of the things that I learned early on in my journey was, especially from a social media standpoint, posting on social media, and this was something that God kind of like checked me on like years ago. He was like, okay, you're like posting, right? So even if your post only gets 1 like or 2 likes or no likes, like you put it out there and that post is going to reach who it's supposed to be reached. Okay. Or it's going to reach who it's supposed to reach. But it's easy to get caught up in the engagement and the likes and the reshares. And in the process of doing that, you miss out on what you've been called to do. You completely miss the assignment.
The purpose behind the post. So, so we talked about step 1. So I know you kind of talked about how curated happiness was never supposed to be a brand in itself. So what if I'm a new creative, I took step 1, I showed up for myself and I started, and then I changed my mind? Or it's like, oh my gosh, I started doing natural hair videos because the TikTok girlies was showing me the little bohemian braids, but I'm really passionate about cooking.
Pivoting is okay. As long as you're consistent. So this is how I look at it. Consistency to me looks like showing up regardless of, what you're doing. You could be doing natural hair today and you could be doing something completely different tomorrow. Showing up and stopping, that's a completely different thing.
That's true.
When you have people, your audience of people who are your tribe is what I call them, they value your consistency over you starting and stopping anything.
Yep, that's true. was talking, I think this might have been the Bossed Up Gym series. I had Alexis Crown on here, and that's one of the things she said. She's like, your following is depending on you to be consistent. That's how you build your following and retain your following, is by, if they know like you are posting a podcast every Sunday for 10 episodes, then they're gonna like have that expectation for you. But if you're inconsistent and you're not showing up for yourself, then it's like giving them a reason for like, well, why should I invest in you when you barely investing in you, sis? And I was like, girl, you are dropping gems, okay?
That's true. I always tell people from a personal branding standpoint, regardless, if you develop a consistent personal brand, girl, you can be a makeup artist today and you can be delivering trash tomorrow.
Right.
But your job is going to support you because you've been consistently showing up. So, and they develop that trust.
Yes. So, are there any other tips that you want to share with a creative who is just really trying to get out there and they're nervous? They're like, oh, every time I have people come up to me sometimes and they're like, man, I really want to do this, but I don't know where to start. I don't have the equipment. My goodness, y'all, when I tell y'all the equipment don't matter to start, it does not matter. Like, literally, I tell people who ask me this all the time, like, when I started, my friend Kiera let me borrow her iPhone. I think it was like the 7 Plus at the time. She let me borrow her iPhone, and I used to tape it on my bathroom mirror so I could like film my YouTube videos in my apartment bathroom. And I would delete like all the apps off the phone so I could have enough storage. I would delete everything off my computer so I could edit, or I'd go to the library and edit. Like, you can make a way if you're passionate about what you're creating. So just like share with people if they're about to start or if they're nervous, like what advice would you give them, or what like subtle push or encouragement would you charge them with?
I would just say, like I've said before, just start. Like, keep that tunnel vision on what your overall vision is. I would say definitely pray for clarity, especially if you are thinking about starting a business. Definitely, and it's something that you're thinking about monetizing. Definitely pray for clarity. I feel like sometimes, we can get these ideas and we don't take a minute to pause and pray. But for me, I have always found that, really seeking God's face in everything that I do has really been helpful to make sure that what I'm doing is in alignment with what He's calling me to do. And then also not dragging your feet, because sometimes God is telling us to go. And we're finding, yes, we yield and we make all these different excuses, like you said, like, oh Lord, like I don't have the proper equipment and I don't have this. But learning to use what you have available to you.
That part.
Because most of the times you're not going to have quality equipment starting out.
There's always going to be new equipment that you want. Okay, you want better equipment than what you have. Okay,
but just learning to steward what you already have in your hands and learning to make it work. Like, you gotta crawl before you can walk.
And with that, I would add, alongside with starting, even if you're in that before you start phase, a great thing to do is research. A lot of the people who come to me and are asking me about like, oh my gosh, how do I start a YouTube channel and all this thing? If you come to me and you ask me, how do I start a YouTube channel? I'm going to look at you and say, please watch my YouTuber creator series on YouTube, because that in itself tells me that you haven't really done any research. So like, if you're interested in starting a YouTube channel, there's literally a video out there for everything. If you want to learn how to make your own paper, like there's a video, there's a TikTok showing you how to do it. And so if you do that research, that allows you to navigate the starting line differently. So if you know, like, okay, I only have an iPhone to record my videos. Okay, so research, how can I use my iPhone to make high quality videos? How can I make my audio better? Whether that's a $10 lav mic off of Amazon. How can I save up to spend the $10 to get the lav mic? How can I get good lighting. Well, maybe on the days where I'm home during the daylight, that's free. You don't got to buy no softbox lights. Like doing all that research beforehand when you getting ready to get in the little stance before you take off, like that's important as well. So before you start is just as important, I feel like, as when you get to the starting line. Then say go.
And one more thing I would say is realize that your journey is about sacrifices. Mm-hmm. So for years, I sacrificed a lot to be able to position my brands. Mm-hmm. So that meant that I couldn't go out and buy clothes all the time, especially when I knew that I wanted new equipment. Like I've been a entrepreneur, I would say, for about 10 years. And literally every year for Christmas, I would tell my husband, like, don't go buy me clothes. Mm-hmm. Don't go buy me anything stupid. I want you, not that it's stupid, but I want you to invest in my business.
Investment, not just a purchase.
Think about it that way as well. Like when you have family members who are looking to gift you with things, or if you're going out to eat all the time, find things that you can sacrifice and make cuts to get those things that's going to enhance your creative journey.
Right. And that's so true, because you want to make sure you're making investments and not just spending your money or purchases. Like, because anyone can talk you into buying a ring light or buying this, that, and the third. But is it an actual investment? For me, like when I first started buying, right now I have some of my first softbox lights in the background here. And when I bought them, I knew I was investing in my journey as a creative. And so like now that investment has brought a return on investment. And so it's allowed me to make more money to in turn, buy new equipment or continue putting out content. So I definitely think making an investment is so important. And so one last question I have for you is there a piece of advice that someone gave you, or a scripture or something that you've held on to remind you of like how you got where you are today, or something that helped push you and remind you to keep going?
The biggest thing is just embracing you. That's been my biggest motivation tool, is embracing you. Keep your eyes on your journey, not on anybody else's.
I love that. And so do you have any last thoughts or anything else you want to say to the creative watching?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, well, I have one more thing I want to share with you guys. Definitely spontaneous, but LaShay has been talking to me probably about the past 2 years about getting a vlog camera, because she wants to do a vlog camera so she can do vlogs and document like her journey and all those things. And I do have an old kind of dusty vlog camera that I've been telling you I'm gonna give you. So in addition to that, I'm also gonna be giving you $500 towards whatever vlog camera or equipment that you need. And I didn't tell her I was gonna do this, so congratulations. So again, just an investment. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to do things like this if it wasn't for me starting, me saying yes, and me investing in myself, so I can in turn be able to invest into other people who have invested into me. So I just want to say thank you, and hopefully you get whatever you need to push you forward in your brand.
Thank you, Slam.
No problem. And so thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Uncut Gems with Slim with my girl, LaShay. See y'all next week.